In a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Atlanta, where perfectly manicured lawns meet white picket fences, an ordinary Sunday afternoon turned into a social media firestorm that would challenge everyone's assumptions about prejudice, judgment, and the power of looking beyond first impressions. "I was just trying to take pictures of the house," says Michael, a 35-year-old professional photographer, his voice still carrying a hint of disbelief as he recounts the events of that day. What should have been a routine real estate photography assignment quickly spiraled into a scene that's become all too familiar in modern America. Someone being judged solely based on the color of their skin. The footage, captured on Michael's phone and later viewed millions of times across social media platforms, shows two women in designer sundresses frantically pointing and shouting from their driveways. "He doesn't belong here," one of them yells, while furiously dialing on her phone. "I'm calling the police right now." The other woman stands with her arms crossed, shooting suspicious glares while clutching her designer purse closer to her chest. But what happened next would leave millions of viewers speechless and force us all to confront our own biases. You see, Michael wasn't just any photographer. He had a history with this neighborhood that nobody could have expected. And these two women, well, let's just say their actions that day would come back to haunt them in the most unexpected way. As police sirens wailed in the distance, Michael remained remarkably calm, continuing to adjust his camera settings while facing a barrage of accusations. "I've seen this kind of situation play out too many times before," he explains, shaking his head. "But I knew something they didn't." The growing crowd of onlookers, many already recording with their phones, had no idea they were about to witness a moment that would challenge everything they thought they knew about this situation. 3 police cars pulled up to the scene, and what happened in the next few minutes would leave everyone standing in stunned silence. As tension hung thick in the air, an officer stepped out of his vehicle, looked at Michael, and broke into a wide smile. But that's not even the most surprising part of this story. The truth behind Michael's presence in the neighborhood that day, and his connection to those very same houses, would not only silence his accusers, but also spark a vital conversation about the prejudices that still plague our communities. It would become a powerful reminder that things aren't always what they seem, and that sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places. This isn't just another story about racial profiling. It's a tale that takes a sharp turn into territory few could have predicted. As Michael's camera continued rolling, capturing every moment of what was about to unfold, none of the participants realized they were about to become part of a viral story that would challenge millions of viewers to question their own assumptions. As we dive deeper into this remarkable incident, you'll see why this particular confrontation has resonated with so many people across the country. It's not just about what happened in those tense moments. It's about what came after, and how a single afternoon in a quiet suburb would end up teaching all of us an unforgettable lesson about judgment, redemption, and the surprising ways our lives can be interconnected. But before we reveal the shocking twist that left everyone speechless, let's back up and look at how this story really began, because trust me, nothing about this situation is quite what it seems. Just 3 hours earlier, Michael had pulled up to the entrance of Oakwood Heights in his Tesla Model Y, camera equipment carefully packed in the trunk. As one of Atlanta's top real estate photographers, he built a reputation for capturing homes in ways that made them irresistible to potential buyers. Today's assignment was particularly special, a series of luxury properties that were part of a new development project. The morning had started perfectly. The sky was that brilliant shade of Georgia blue that photographers dream about, with just enough clouds to add character to his exterior shots. Michael had already photographed 2 houses without incident, exchanging pleasant waves with dog walkers and joggers who passed by. Nobody seemed to pay much attention to him as he worked, setting up his tripod and adjusting his equipment with the precision that had earned him numerous industry awards. Everything changed when he reached the 3rd house on Pine Grove Circle. As Michael was setting up his shot of the Mediterranean-style villa, he noticed movement in his peripheral vision. 2 women had emerged from their homes across the street, their conversation dropping to whispers as they pointed in his direction. At first, he tried to ignore it. After 15 years in photography, he was used to curious onlookers. "I've photographed hundreds of properties," Michael explains, adjusting his collar as he recalls the moment. You develop a sixth sense for when something's about to go wrong. That sixth sense started tingling when one of the women, wearing an expensive floral dress, began approaching while filming with her phone. What the women didn't know, couldn't have known, was that Michael's connection to Oakwood Heights ran far deeper than anyone could have guessed. As he stood there, facing their accusations, he held onto a secret that would turn this entire situation on its head, but revealing it too soon could have ruined everything he'd worked for. The situation escalated quickly. "You need to leave right now," demanded the woman in the floral dress, her voice trembling with what she probably thought was authority. Her friend, sporting designer sunglasses and a tennis outfit, chimed in from her driveway. "We know everyone who lives here, and you're not one of them." Michael's response was measured, professional, exactly what you'd expect from someone with his background. He calmly explained his presence, even offering to show his photography credentials. But as anyone who's experienced similar situations knows, credentials don't always matter when minds are already made up. By now, other neighbors had begun to gather, drawn by the commotion. Some pulled out their phones, ready to document what they thought would be another viral moment of confrontation. Little did they know they were about to capture something far more extraordinary. As the police sirens grew louder, Michael continued his work, seemingly unfazed. He adjusted his camera settings, checked his light meter, and even smiled occasionally, behavior that only seemed to agitate his accusers more. "Who acts this calm when the police are coming?" one of the women demanded, her voice rising with frustration. The answer to that question, along with the true nature of Michael's presence in Oakwood Heights that day, was about to reshape everyone's understanding of what they were witnessing. But first, those police cars pulling up to the scene would set in motion a chain of events that nobody, especially not the two women still filming with their phones, could have anticipated. Just as the first officer stepped out of his car, reaching for something in his pocket, the true story behind this confrontation was about to emerge. The first police officer who stepped out of his car was Sergeant David Thompson, a 20-year veteran of the force. As he approached, the two women immediately rushed toward him, phones still recording, eager to explain their concerns. But something unusual happened, something that made everyone watching stop in their tracks. Instead of addressing the women, Sergeant Thompson walked straight past them, extended his hand to Michael, and asked with a warm smile, "How's the photography coming along today?" The looks on the accusers' faces shifted from righteous indignation to visible confusion. The woman in the floral dress lowered her phone slightly, her mouth hanging open as she watched the friendly interaction unfold. Her friend with the designer sunglasses took a step back, suddenly less certain of her position. But that was just the beginning of their awakening. As two more police cars pulled up, Michael reached into his camera bag and pulled out a folder. Inside was something that would change the entire dynamic of this confrontation, something that explained his unwavering calm throughout the ordeal. The gathering crowd of neighbors grew silent as they watched the scene unfold. Several had their phones up, still recording, capturing what was quickly becoming clear wasn't going to be the type of viral video they'd expected. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns as tension hung in the air like Georgia humidity. "I tried to explain this earlier," Michael began, his voice carrying across the now quiet street, "but sometimes people need to learn things the hard way." He opened the folder and Sergeant Thompson nodded knowingly. The two women, who moments ago had been so certain of their actions, now shifted uncomfortably on their feet. What happened next sent whispers rippling through the crowd. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the scene, and out stepped a figure that made the two accusers visibly pale. The person's identity, and their connection to both Michael and this exclusive neighborhood, was about to turn this story of prejudice into something far more complex. As the SUV's door closed with a soft thud, the woman in the tennis outfit frantically whispered to her friend, "Oh no, oh no, oh no." She recognized the vehicle's occupant immediately, and the realization of what was about to happen hit her like a physical force. Michael stood quietly, his camera still in hand, as the SUV's occupant walked toward the group. The evening light caught the edge of a familiar pin on their lapel, a pin that every resident of Oakwood Heights would recognize instantly. The same pin that, had anyone bothered to look closely earlier, could have prevented this entire situation. The crowd held its collective breath as the new arrival prepared to speak. In just moments, everything these women thought they knew about Michael, about their neighborhood, and about their own assumptions was about to be completely upended. The truth that was about to emerge would not only silence his accusers, but would force everyone present to confront their own hidden biases. As phones continued recording what was about to become a very different kind of viral video, the SUV's occupant took one look at the scene, then turned to address the group. What they said next would leave everyone stunned. From the SUV stepped Catherine Williams, president of the Oakwood Heights Development Corporation. Her presence alone was enough to command attention, but it was her first words that sent shockwaves through the gathered crowd. "I see you've all met our new head of community development and my trusted partner in the neighborhood expansion project." The woman in the floral dress nearly dropped her phone. Her friend with the designer sunglasses took them off slowly, revealing eyes wide with dawning comprehension. But this revelation wasn't even the biggest surprise of the afternoon. Catherine turned to Michael with an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry about this, Michael. I should have sent out that community email this morning like we discussed." Then, addressing the stunned onlookers, she continued, "But I suppose this is as good a time as any to make the announcement." Michael nodded, reaching into his camera bag once again. This time, he pulled out not just a folder, but architectural renderings that made several neighbors gasp audibly. The images showed a complete reimagining of Oakwood Heights, one that would transform it into Atlanta's most innovative planned community. These photographs weren't just for real estate listings, Michael explained, his voice carrying a hint of irony. "I was documenting the neighborhood's current state before we begin the revitalization project next month." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. A project that, ironically, will include new security measures to prevent actual unauthorized access. The two women who had called the police now stood motionless, their faces flushed with embarrassment. But the situation was about to become even more uncomfortable for them. Catherine reached for another set of documents in her briefcase, her expression growing serious. "Actually, Michael," she said, "since we're all here, there's something else we need to address." She pulled out what appeared to be property assessments, specifically for the homes belonging to the two accusers. The documents bore bright red stamps that made both women visibly flinch. Sergeant Thompson, still standing nearby, shook his head knowingly. He'd been briefed about the upcoming changes to the neighborhood weeks ago. Sometimes, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, the very people who claim to protect the community's values are the ones who... But before he could finish his thought, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the scene. The driver's identity, visible through the windshield, caused Catherine to raise her eyebrows in surprise. "Well," she said, "I certainly wasn't expecting him here today." The crowd parted as the car door opened, revealing someone whose presence would add yet another layer to this already complex situation. The two women who had started this whole incident now looked like they wanted nothing more than to disappear into their perfectly manicured lawns. As the new arrival walked toward the group, Michael's calm demeanor finally showed a crack of emotion, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He knew what was coming next, and it was about to make everything that had happened so far seem like merely the opening act of a much bigger story. From the Mercedes stepped Judge Robert Richardson, the city's most prominent civil rights advocate, and, as it turned out, Michael's father-in-law. The judge's presence immediately shifted the atmosphere from tense confrontation to stunned silence. "I was in court when I got Catherine's message," he announced, straightening his tie. "Thought I should see firsthand what's happening in my daughter's future neighborhood." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Michael wasn't just the head of community development. He was about to become one of Oakwood Heights' most prominent residents. The architectural renderings he'd been photographing included plans for his own family's future home, right next door to the two women who had called the police on him. Catherine stepped forward, her voice carrying a mix of authority and disappointment. "Those property assessments I mentioned, they're part of our community standards review. We've recorded 17 complaints about harassment of delivery workers, maintenance staff, and visitors in the past 3 months. She turned to face the two women directly. all from your properties. The woman in the tennis outfit started to speak, but Judge Richardson raised his hand. Save it for the community board hearing next week, he said firmly, though I suspect you'll both be too busy packing to attend. The meaning was clear. Their actions had consequences, and those consequences were about to cost them their place in Oakwood Heights. But Michael, surprising everyone present, stepped forward. Actually, he said, pulling out one final document from his folder, I have a different proposal. The paper he held was a draft of a new community initiative, one that would require all residents to participate in diversity and inclusion programs. Instead of pushing people out, maybe it's time we helped people grow. Judge Richardson smiled proudly at his son-in-law. This was exactly why Michael had been chosen to lead the community's development. He saw opportunities for transformation where others saw only conflict. The two women, who moments ago had been facing eviction, now stood speechless at this unexpected offer of redemption. Catherine reviewed the document and nodded approvingly. This could be the pilot program we've been looking for, she said, though I suspect these two will be doing a lot more than just attending workshops. She gestured toward the community center, where Michael's photos would soon be displayed as part of an exhibition on neighborhood change and growth. As the crowd began to disperse, Sergeant Thompson approached the two women. You ladies might want to take a good look at those photos, he suggested. The man you called the police on. He's not just documenting these houses. He's documenting a moment in history. Your moment. The question is, how do you want to be remembered in it? The sun was setting over Oakwood Heights as Michael packed up his camera equipment. The story could have ended there, with justice served and lessons learned. But there was one final twist that no one saw coming, one that would transform this incident from a local controversy into a national conversation about community, redemption, and the power of second chances. As Michael closed his camera bag, his phone buzzed with a notification. The video of the incident had already gone viral, but not for the reasons anyone expected. The unexpected turn of events had captured the nation's attention, and tomorrow morning, Michael would wake up to find himself at the center of a movement that would change not just Oakwood Heights, but communities across America. The video that captured the nation's attention wasn't just about conflict. It was about transformation. Within days, major news networks picked up the story, but not for its dramatic confrontation. Instead, they focused on what happened next, how a moment of prejudice turned into an opportunity for genuine change. 3 months later, Oakwood Heights looks different. The community center, once a rarely used building at the edge of the development, now hosts weekly gatherings where neighbors share stories, experiences, and meals together. The two women who had called the police that day, they became unexpected advocates for change, sharing their story as a cautionary tale about the cost of unchecked assumptions. It's not easy to admit when you're wrong, the woman who had worn the floral dress that day recently told a group of new residents. But it's even harder to live with yourself when you don't try to make things right. Her friend nodded in agreement, having traded her designer sunglasses for a more open perspective on life. Michael's photography exhibition, Faces of Community, now hangs permanently in the center's main hall. The images tell a story not just of beautiful homes, but of the people who make a neighborhood more than just streets and buildings. Among the photos is one taken on that fateful afternoon. A moment of confrontation transformed into a testament to human potential for growth. Judge Richardson's influence helped expand the community initiative beyond Oakwood Heights. Similar programs have since been adopted by 12 other Atlanta neighborhoods, with Michael's diversity and inclusion curriculum serving as a model for communities nationwide. Catherine Williams now regularly speaks at urban development conferences, sharing how one incident revolutionized their approach to community building. The most surprising change came from Sergeant Thompson. Inspired by the events, he developed a new police training program focused on community engagement and bias recognition. Sometimes, he says, the best way to serve and protect is to help people see each other clearly. As for Michael and his family, they did move into Oakwood Heights, right next door to one of his former accusers. Their children now play together in the community park, a living reminder that the barriers between people are often more imagined than real. The video that went viral that day has become a teaching tool in schools and corporate training programs across the country. But its most powerful impact remains in the quiet moments, like when new residents move in and are greeted with welcome baskets instead of suspicious glares, or when longtime residents catch themselves making assumptions and choose a different path. 1 year after the incident, at the annual Oakwood Heights Community Celebration, Michael unveiled his latest project, a time-lapse video showing the neighborhood's transformation, not just the physical changes to the properties, but the human evolution captured in candid moments of connection and understanding. The real estate value of these homes has increased significantly, Catherine noted during the celebration. But the real wealth in this community isn't in our property values. It's in the way we've learned to value each other. As this story spread across social media and news outlets, it sparked similar conversations and changes in communities nationwide. What began as a confrontation on a sunny afternoon became a catalyst for transformation, proving that sometimes the most powerful changes start with the hardest moments. Today, if you visit Oakwood Heights, you'll find a community that looks much like any other affluent suburb. But look closer, and you'll see something rare and precious, a place where people learn to see beyond their first impressions, where mistakes became opportunities, and where the true meaning of neighborhood transcends property lines and prejudices. Sometimes, the most beautiful pictures are the ones that show us not just who we are, but who we can become.